So I'm finally finished Desolation Called Peace. First thing I want to say, I really am surprised that this is the second book in a two-book duology or whatever. It very much felt like sort of a setup for, not really a setup, but it felt like one in a larger sort of serial of adventures of Three Seagrass and Mahit Zamare. Um, like I could very easily seeing it being book two of a trilogy. Um, but like I said, there's no real overarching plot between the first two books other than maybe the relationship between Three Seagrass and Mahit Zamare. Um, there are two distinct plots, and like I've also said before, this one seems to be a neat story, a neat idea that they kind of shoehorned our main characters from the first book into. I still feel that, even though I did enjoy it, I still think it's a really good book. The first one was better, in my opinion, but it was sort of interesting. I like the idea of hive mind and the continuity of memory and from like the Imagio lines and stuff. I did like the exploration of that, but the ending, like stuff like 20 Cicada, whose like use name is Swarm, taking the fungus into himself and becoming one of the hive mind. I mean, his name's Swarm. I should have seen that coming. Or maybe it's just sort of too on the nose that his name is Swarm and he becomes one of the hive mind. But essentially, that's how the plot resolves: is he becomes joins the sort of alien hive mind, and thus the aliens can understand humans through him, and how different they are, because humans are not a hive mind. But so that sort of creates a temporary ceasefire, with the understanding that in the future, or not in the future, but the next step in the negotiations is for a number of the Sunlit, a number of Shard pilots, both of whom have this algorithmic sort of semi-hive mind, and also some Lsel stationers who aren't hive mind, but they do have the continuation of memory and sort of the preservation of knowledge and maybe souls to a degree through the Imagio lines. So those three groups of people are going to either be in on the negotiations or perhaps join the alien hive itself by taking in the fungus unto themselves, to sort of give the aliens the knowledge and the understanding of what humans are, how they work, why they are still people even though they are not part of this hive mind. That because it seems like the aliens don't understand what people are. To them, people are sort of members of this collective, and if they lose members of this collective, they can always be replaced. There's nothing truly lost, and looking at humans, where each individual, when they're lost, is lost forever, is very strange to them. So anyway, so that's how it resolves. There was a part to play by 8 Antidote, who went against the Emperor's orders. The Emperor had ordered that, and the Ministry had ordered that 9 Hibiscus have a full nuclear strike on the one of the alien planets they found and utterly destroy it. But 8 Antidote was 100% against that. He is just a 10-year-old kid, but he is heir to the Empire. So he manages to find a Shard pilot, because he knows about the Shard trick, enters the Shard and connects himself with the sort of hive mind of the Shards, contacts the one who's carrying the orders to the fleet, orders them to destroy those orders, and then sends his own orders, saying, do not destroy the planet. And despite all that, 16 Moonrise, perhaps on behalf of the Third Palmers in the Ministry of War, goes against Nine Hibiscus and the Emperor's orders and still takes her ship to the planet with the intent to destroy it. However, much like how Nine Hibiscus had to order her ship to fire on one of the shards that was in the process of an agonizing death as sort of a mercy, Nine Hibiscus has to give the trajectory and the information on 16 Moonrise's flagship to the aliens in order so the aliens can destroy it before it destroys their planet. And she does this through 20 Cicada, who is part of the hive mind at this point, and he says there's still enough of his individuality left. He's still 20 Cicada, that he agrees to use a pinpoint strike to take with the bridge, killing 16 Moonrise and whoever's on the bridge, but not the thousands of soldiers and sailors in the ship. So that occurs. Everyone lives happily ever after. Mahit and Three Seagrass, they sort of, I guess there was a stationer, the counselor for miners, I believe, enters in the midst of this sort of climax and sort of condemns Mahit and basically exiles her from the station, declaring that she's too Teixcalaan to be a member of Stationer Society, and how he should have agreed with Heritage that she should have been destroyed and her Imaginal line destroyed. And so, I mean, it doesn't really end well for Mahit. She sort of loses her home, becomes an exile, and you think, well, she loves Teixcalaan and she sort of has a high position. She could have a high position in Teixcalaan and could go back with Three Seagrass, who she's in love with, and that's what Three Seagrass kind of not expects but asks of her, like, hey, do you want to go back? Like, we can go back to the palace and live out our lives and read poetry and write poetry. But Mahit says no. It's kind of strange. It kind of ends like the previous book ended, where they both go their separate ways, with the acknowledgement that there's still a connection there and it might be revitalized sometime in the future. This is what had me thinking, like, oh, there could be another book in this sort of series of adventures in Teixcalaan. But yeah, Three Seagrass presumably goes back to Palace Earth and continues her life as third undersecretary to the Ministry of Information. Mahit Samar goes off to some other planet, a Teixcalaan planet potentially, and lives in sort of ambassadorial life or something. I'm not really sure where her story sort of ends at the end of all this, but yeah, that's Desolation Called Peace. These last videos are always short because all the ones leading up to the end, I'm predicting, I'm thinking, I'm trying to figure out where it's going, and then I get to the end and I'm like, okay, it's done. I like this, I didn't like that, the end. So I don't know what else to say. That's it. That's Desolation Called Peace. Very neat, very cool world. It wouldn't surprise me. I don't know what would surprise me more, if there wasn't a third book or if there ended up never being a third book. But yeah, very cool. You could just read the first one and end it there, and I think the first one is better, but it was neat to sort of delve back into this world once more. So, A Desolation Called Peace.